Hey everyone, I'm Alex.
And I'm Jack.
And in today's video, we'll be ranking the bosses of Capcom's Resident Evil 3 remake from worst to best. Resident Evil 3 Remake was met with very mixed reception from fans, many of whom criticized the short length relative to the price, generally scripted nature of Nemesis's appearances, and removal of large chunks of the original game on top of it all. As someone who has not played the original, I never really felt like I had much of a stake in that whole debate, and for the record, I honestly really enjoyed the game, but I do understand why these things would bother longtime fans. It makes no sense to me why they would just flat out remove parts of the game. I just watched a long play of the original out of curiosity, and it seems almost totally different. It's like the remake is only loosely based off of it or something. I happen to be partial to games that are on the shorter side, so to me it just meant the Platinum Trophy would be less annoying to get because the playthroughs would take less time. Anyways, rather than going over the reception of the game and making comparisons to the original, we are here today to discuss the boss fights, which are honestly better than most Resident Evil games' boss catalogs in my opinion. With that said, let's get into it.
How many times can a tyrant mutate into an amorphous cluster? Well, definitely at least twice. Nemesis's disappointing finale concludes the controversial Resident Evil 3 remake in a substandard fashion. In what has since become a trend, starting with G5 way back in Resident Evil 2 1998, Lovecraftian mutations into incomprehensible balls of organic nonsense is now a staple of the Resident Evil series. Understood. What the majority of these bosses still have is quality in mechanical design, however. What we politely called Blob Nemesis is little more than a test of your patience and will, the lowest rung on the boss fight ladder, barely qualifying for this ranking as is. There is an unparalleled level of satisfaction that comes with using a handheld laser cannon against Nemesis. Wait. This takes place in 1999? It's like if Back to the Future 2 was made during the Second World War. At least in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, the laser cannon looked goofy and prototypical, showing at least a bit of immersion, although you could also just point out that this Nemesis transformed from a Frankenstein monster to a factory-sized blob, and in the original a large bug creature, so I'll just drop it. Even if ridiculous, Blob Nemesis is still undoubtedly enjoyable. Blowing a powerful blast through the exponentially mutating Nemesis isn't just a satisfying visual spectacle, but requires some player input as well. Before the finale, Jill fires the cannon at Nemesis to little effect, and by doing so, 3 of the cannon's batteries are released from their cells. This is the overall mechanic of the fight, pushing in these batteries while holding off Nemesis. Nemesis can fire off acid pelts and slam the ground with his limbs, but also has bulbous weak spots with minimal health. Do the math. If you get rid of these growths, Nemesis becomes momentarily stunned, and while these can regenerate, you have more than enough time to move the batteries back in place and fire the cannon. Blob Nemesis isn't offensive, but as a finale fails to deliver in a similar vein to G5, with it being too unrealistic, scripted, and fantastical to feel truly rewarding as a conclusion.
While it was lame that Nemesis was scripted in this game, removing all fear related to encountering him if you knew what to do, these little sequences were still pretty cool action-wise. On most difficulties, this fight is as simple as having good movement and dodging whenever he locks on and sends a missile your way. This is a totally different ballgame on Inferno though, where he's cracked out beyond belief and makes a football quarterback effort to close the distance and pummel you. Unless your dodging abilities are up there with Neo from the Matrix, you're going to be eating a lot of rockets to the back. It's not a very thrilling fight otherwise, but at least the visual is cool. As you may have guessed by our channel profile picture, we think Nemesis looks cool as shit. Giving a rocket launcher? Why the hell not? A zombie who isn't a complete moron is a neat concept. By comparison, however, the original rocket launcher Nemesis is far and away the better version. The rocket launcher wasn't just a one-off scripted segment, instead just part of his open-world stalker appearances after a certain point in the story that he keeps for the rest of the game. I also like how he looks more in the original game, although they still had some neat fashion choices in the new look, like adding the caution tape to his outfit. Like his spiritual brother Mr. X, he has some solid style. Somebody at Umbrella put a lot of work into making their henchmen own the room in more ways than one. Rocket Launcher Nemesis isn't much more than a semi-scripted chase, but as you'll come to find, the farther we get in the video, coolness is often the determining factor of quality here.
Some call it Feral Nemesis, some call it Crawler Nemesis, and we call it Dog Nemesis. He's a quadrupedal dog. For many of the older fans of the Resident Evil series, Nemesis's rapid transformation from tyrant to feral creature was their last straw, as understandably they were disappointed by the hours of content cut and replaced by this short-lived second stage of Nemesis's mutation. Before I dig any further into Dog Nemesis, I'd like to say that he looks fantastic. As well, the story implications are a bit heavier in this fight than the first one, as when Nemesis abruptly destroys the walkway to get to Jill, she drops the T-virus vaccine and Nikolai recovers it. Dog Nemesis is difficult to avoid if you're not actively moving, but so long as you are, his jumps and swipes are not particularly dangerous. As well, you can evade nearly all of his attacks with the dodge, and if you've already played through the game, Chris Redfield's Stars Field Combat Manual practically removes the challenge of this first phase entirely. Dog Nemesis gets easily staggered by the grenade launcher, and with that in mind, this first phase can go down in a short minute. After enough damage is dealt, a cutscene with Carlos plays out where he sits in a booth above the arena, and Nemesis then screams in response, igniting the generators around the plant's walls. From here, like the first fight, Nemesis will run along said walls and hide behind a random generator, prompting you to shoot at them to overcharge them and stun Nemesis momentarily, opening him to damage. While very similar to the first Dog Nemesis, the main reasons this is lower for me is the less interesting take on the shared wall running mechanic and enemy padding. 2 zombies spawn on either side of the arena throughout the entire fight and are a nuisance, sometimes getting you while you're shooting at Nemesis, not only damaging you, but allowing him to get up, forcing you to go through the whole cycle all over again. Once you finally beat the creature, Carlos turns on a claw and knocks Nemesis out, putting an end to Resident Evil 3's hardest and most aggravating boss by far, only this high up from the wall crawl mechanic, which was once again done better in the first fight.
Now this is a real boss fight. The first time you butt heads with Dog Nemesis is a good old-fashioned case of dodging attacks and countering with shotgun blast to the noggin, plus all the explosives you can find. I tend to like these fights the most, and the dodge feature makes it a lot more enjoyable because you feel like you can actually evade attacks instead of just awkwardly slouching around and praying the boss is stupid enough to whiff punches at point-blank range. Seeing him run around the wall in circles adds a lot of tension if you're not sure what exactly he's going to do, and it's fun blasting him out of his jog if you know how to do that. Reminds me of this one kid named Emiliano from kindergarten who thought he was a wolf and would run around the same way. He also bit Jack in the head one time. That guy was really something. Wonder what he's up to these days. Anyways, I like the fire physics a lot in this game. Something about seeing him burst into flames after taking a grenade is just so satisfying. I honestly think the idea of Nemesis evolving multiple times was pretty cool. I'm less hostile to this idea than some. While it may not be the Nemesis we all know and love, this maniac monstrosity is a pretty neat evolution all the same.
Even for how much worse the Stalker Nemesis in the remake is compared to the original Nemesis, it's still far and away one of the game's highlights, a consistently recurring and consistently terrifying presence for about the first half of the exposition. Nemesis T-type bioorganic weapons were made by Umbrella Europe's No. 6 laboratory as part of the Nemesis project, created through the insertion of the NE alpha parasite into T-103 tyrants, like Mr. X. Nemesis models were more intelligent and dangerous than T-103 clones, but the only known Nemesis to make it into the field of combat was Nemesis T-02, the Pursuer. The main flaw Stalker Nemesis faces is that, like Rocket Launcher Nemesis but set in the open world, all of his sequences are scripted and have just one linear escape route, so while there is still bits of tension, veteran players of the series can trot along like nothing's even happened when Nemesis makes his bombastic entrances. This is mainly due to the fact that in his first 2 appearances, he's actually designed to be taken out by a grenade before the chase even begins, dropping a supply case with weapon mods and leaving him stunned for nearly a minute, giving you more than enough time to escape his scripted aggression zone. To clear up what we mean by Stalker Nemesis, we're not counting the introduction where Jill escapes her apartment or the car sequence, as awesome as both were. What we are counting is the 4 open world fights, first after you resupply energy to the subway, the second in front of Moon Donuts, the third in the subway station, and the fourth in front of Toy Uncle. While not necessarily a boss fight by definition, it is a unique gameplay mechanic that provides a lot of atmosphere in the moment. Nemesis has a broad moveset and is deceptively quick, forcing you to be on your toes at all times. However, Nemesis's appearances, unlike the original, are set and happen on script and only happen one way. I want to give credit to specifically the vent scenario, however, in that if you don't take advantage of the grenade stun, it is really intense and just fun. All in all, Stalker Nemesis is quite enjoyable, but due to both its small range in the open world and grenade cheese, he is a massive downgrade from the much more terrifying and challenging open world chase events from the original Resident Evil 3.
If you combine the coolest form of Nemesis, his normal one, with the coolest weapon out there, the flamethrower, obviously it's going to be, well, cool. It starts off as if it'll just be a nice catch-up session with the homie Carlos, who sounds weirdly similar to my buddy Cleanrot Gumbly of Brain Alert fame. However, shit gets real when Nemesis picks you up by the head and, rather than crushing your skull like a grape, just kindly tosses you to safety for some reason. Maybe he just likes the thrill of the hunt. It's nothing too serious at first with the significant lead you have on him, but once you hit the roof, the real deal kicks off. It's sort of like Dog Nemesis in that you're actually fighting him, but here you have a more distinct objective: blow up his fuel tank. This is both fun and enormously satisfying. Not just the big explosion, but even chipping away at it with well-placed pistol shots feels so good. He's deceptively nimble and has a few lunges and swipes that make it take at least a smidge of effort to not get lit up and thrown off the building. A shooting star, if you will. It's a lot like the original game's fights with Nemesis as well, given it's the only traditional boss encounter with his normal form. He's a bit less of a spaz here, which is unfortunate since that was one of the most intimidating parts of his old AI, but his lunge attack is sorta close to his signature sprint, so it's not totally absent. With both the best gameplay and the coolest design, Flamethrower Nemesis is a shoo-in for number 1 and an understandable fan favorite.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoyed. Remember to like and subscribe if you haven't, and if you'd like to, check out our Patreon, linked in the description below. That's all for now. Deuces.